The Forgotten Relic. Deep in the void of space, a massive warship lay silent among the wreckage of an ancient battlefield. The ship, once called Valkyrie, was a legend in human history, an unstoppable force in the old wars. But now, it was nothing more than a forgotten relic, covered in dust and floating lifelessly. Aliens from the Galactic Dominion watched from their sleek, high-tech ships. To them, Valkyrie was just an abandoned piece of metal, a useless ghost of the past. "This is the great human warship," Captain Vorkath of the Dominion fleet scoffed. He was a tall reptilian creature with cold, golden eyes. His crew laughed as they scanned the ancient vessel. Nothing but rust and failure. Humans rely too much on their history. This relic will never fight again. The Dominion had conquered many human colonies over the years. Their technology was superior, their fleets unstoppable. They believed that humanity's time was over. Destroying the last remains of human power was only a formality now. One of Vorkath's officers, a younger alien named Kresh, tapped his control panel. "Sir, I'm detecting minimal energy readings from the ship, just background radiation. No sign of life." Then it settled, Vorkath said with a cruel smile. "Prepare the salvage crews. We will strip it down and use its metal for something useful." As the aliens made their plans, hidden deep within Valkyrie's dark corridors, something stirred. The ship was not as dead as it seemed. Inside the warship, Lieutenant Kane moved silently through the dusty hallways, his footsteps echoing. The emergency lights flickered weakly, barely illuminating the long-abandoned corridors. Kane was one of the last remaining human engineers who knew Valkyrie's secrets. He wiped sweat from his forehead and whispered, "Come on, old girl, wake up." For years, Valkyrie had been offline, hidden in deep space after humanity's last great war. But Kane had found it, and he had a mission: to bring it back to life. He reached the ship's main control room, a vast chamber filled with ancient monitors and darkened panels. Dust covered everything. He placed his hand on the main console, feeling the cold metal beneath his fingers. "System booting," a robotic voice whispered weakly. Kane's heart pounded. It was working. Barely. He quickly connected his portable power unit to the ship's core. Sparks flew as the system struggled to activate. The emergency displays flickered, showing old battle data and damage reports. The ship was in terrible condition. Most of its weapons were offline. Engines were dead, and power levels were dangerously low. But Kane had no choice. If he didn't wake Valkyrie now, the aliens would tear it apart. He activated the ship's internal sensors and gasped. The aliens were already outside, preparing to board. The aliens close in. "Sir, we have docked with the relic," Kresh reported to Captain Vorkath. "Our engineers are preparing to enter." Vorkath smirked. "Good. Let's see if we can find anything valuable before we turn this junk into scrap." The Dominion soldiers moved carefully, their armored boots clanking as they entered Valkyrie's silent corridors. Their flashlights cut through the darkness. Dust swirled in the air as they scanned the old ship. One of the aliens sneered, "It smells like death in here." Another laughed. "That's because humans lost long ago." As they moved deeper into the ship, one of the soldiers stopped. His scanner beeped. "Captain, I'm detecting something. A power signature." Vorkath frowned. "Impossible. That ship is dead." But inside the control room, Kane was desperately working. His fingers flew across the control panel, forcing the ship's systems to reactivate. Come on," he muttered. A deep hum vibrated through the ship. Old circuits came to life. A faint blue glow filled the control room as the ship's artificial intelligence tried to wake up. "System integrity low," a robotic voice said weakly. Kane swallowed hard. "I don't care. I just need you to wake up." The ship's systems flickered, and for a brief moment, something ancient stirred. The first sign of life. Back outside, the alien engineers froze as the warship vibrated slightly. "Did you feel that?" one of them asked. Vorkath narrowed his eyes. Report. Kresh checked his scanner. Sir, I think the ship just tried to reactivate. The laughter stopped. For the first time, a small sliver of doubt crept into Vorkath's mind. Could the humans really be trying to wake this thing up? He scowled. No, this is just leftover energy. A final death twitch. Destroy it. He turned to his weapons officer. Fire a plasma torpedo at its core. If it has any life left, we'll make sure it never wakes up. Inside Valkyrie, alarms blared. Kane's eyes widened in horror as he saw the alien fleet charging their weapons. If he didn't do something now, Valkyrie would be lost forever. With a deep breath, he slammed his hand on the emergency override. Eye activation. Engaged, the robotic voice whispered. Something ancient awoke, and for the first time in decades, the warship breathed. Echoes of power. A deep mechanical hum filled Valkyrie's hollow corridors. Dust vibrated off the walls. Control panels flickered, their old circuits struggling to hold power. It was weak, but it was alive. Lieutenant Kane felt the shift under his feet. He didn't need sensors to tell them what was happening. Valkyrie had awakened. But outside, Captain Vorkath of the Dominion fleet was already moving. Fire the plasma torpedo, he barked. A streak of blue fire erupted from the alien battleship, speeding toward Valkyrie's core. The Dominion had no patience for relics. This warship would die before it could fully wake. Kane had seconds to react. His hands flew across the console, rerouting the ship's failing power. Shields were offline. Weapons were dead. Engines were unresponsive. But deep within Valkyrie's core, something ancient stirred. Ghost in the machine. The torpedo closed the distance. Inside the warship, a cold, mechanical voice whispered. Threat detected. Initiating emergency protocol. A blast door slammed shut over the ship's exposed core, just in time. The torpedo struck, shaking the entire vessel. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Warning sirens screamed. Kane gritted his teeth as the ship groaned like a waking beast. But it wasn't dead. It was angry. Kane didn't understand it. This ship had been a corpse for years, barely holding itself together. Yet now, something deeper than just old machinery was pushing it forward. The AI's voice, once weak and broken, grew stronger. Valkyrie systems online. Tactical mode engaged. Kane's eyes widened. Oh, you're awake now. The ship didn't answer. It didn't need to. The hunters become the hunted. On the Dominion command deck, Vorkath sneered at the screen. No effect. He growled. Fine. Prepare another volley. This time, I want. He stopped. The Valkyrie moved. Not much, just a slight shift. A barely noticeable flicker of thrusters adjusting position. But to Vorkath, it felt like the first breath of something ancient, something dangerous. Kresh's claws clattered against his console. Sir, I think it's... Before he could finish, the ship's outer hull panels twisted, revealing ancient weapon ports. The ship was still half dead, but its instincts were intact. A deep, vibrating pulse echoed through the wreckage of space. A targeting lock. For the first time, the Dominion fleet wasn't the hunter. They were the prey. The engine of war. Kane barely had time to think. The ship's systems were running on fumes, but it didn't matter. Valkyrie had chosen survival. Give me weapons control, he muttered, fingers dancing over the console. The AI responded instantly. Power allocation critical, suggesting minimal engagement. Minimal engagement. Kane smirked. Fine, let's give them a warning shot. He selected the weakest operational cannon, an old half-functional pulse battery. It wasn't much, but it would send a message. He pressed fire. Nothing happened. Then, a faint thrum echoed through the ship's structure. A slow, ancient, calculated awakening. And then, with a sudden roar, a pulse round erupted from Valkyrie. Not a precise, controlled shot. Not a well-aimed burst of power. No, This was the sound of an old god remembering its rage. The blast rocketed across space, striking the shields of the Dominion flagship. It didn't break through, but it did knock the entire ship backward. Silence followed. On the Dominion bridge, Captain Vorkath felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Fear. Kresh's voice was barely a whisper. "Sir, the relic is fighting back." Vorkath's jaw clenched. He refused to be intimidated by a dead ship and a single desperate human. "Fine," he snarled. "They want to fight. We'll crush them. All ships, fire at will." The heartbeat of a Titan. Inside Valkyrie, Kane braced himself. The entire Dominion fleet was now targeting him. The ship's shields were still failing, and only one cannon had fired. But something was changing. The old warship wasn't just waking up. It was remembering. Somewhere deep in its core, power surged through forgotten circuits. Engines whined, struggling to come back to life. Weapon systems recalibrated. And buried beneath the layers of dust, in the darkest depths of the ship, a single line of text appeared on the command screen. Tactical override engaged. Battle mode restoring. Kane exhaled sharply. "Oh, now this is gonna be fun." Wrath of the Forgotten Titan. The Dominion fleet opened fire. Plasma bolts streaked across the void, turning the battlefield into a storm of burning light. Explosions erupted around Valkyrie, battering its failing shields. The ship shuddered, warning alarms screaming through the corridors. Inside the control room, Kane gripped the console, his knuckles turning white. The shields wouldn't last long. "Come on, Valkyrie," he muttered. "You woke up just in time to die." But deep within the warship, something shifted. Awakening the beast, a low vibration echoed through Valkyrie's hull, like a heartbeat. Then another. Then another. Ancient systems groaned to life, their voices merging into a mechanical symphony. Sparks danced along the walls. Dead circuits flickered and pulsed, reconnecting like severed nerves. The ship was healing itself. Kane's console blazed with new data. Subsystems restored. Primary weapons, on in a line. His heart pounded. That's more like it. With a grin, he slammed his hand onto the targeting controls. Outside, Valkyrie responded. Panels on its outer hull twisted, revealing hidden weapon ports. Cannons that hadn't fired in decades roared as energy surged through their ancient veins. The Dominion fleet hesitated. For the first time, Valkyrie wasn't just surviving. It was fighting back. The first strike. Captain Vorkath watched in stunned silence. The relic wasn't supposed to be this strong. It was supposed to be dead. And yet, his sensors screamed as Valkyrie locked onto his fleet. A deep, resonating hum filled the void. The warship's ancient railguns, larger than anything the Dominion had ever seen, adjusted their aim. Their long-forgotten systems calculated the perfect trajectory. Then, with a thunderous boom, they fired. A streak of kinetic fire tore through the battlefield. The Dominion cruiser closest to Valkyrie didn't stand a chance. The railgun round struck its hull, punching through its shields like paper. For a moment, there was silence. Then, in a single cataclysmic explosion, the ship was ripped in half. Vorkath's jaw tightened. One shot, one ancient warship, and it had just obliterated his front line. This isn't possible. But it was. The fear spreads. Panic rippled through the Dominion fleet. Their invincible armada had just taken a devastating hit from a ship they had mocked. The second in command, Kresh, bared his fangs. "Captain, orders." Vorkath clenched his fists. He refused to be bested by a relic. "All ships, overwhelm it." The fleet adjusted course, moving in perfect synchronization. Their weapons glowed, preparing for a devastating coordinated strike. But inside Valkyrie, Kane only smirked. The ship wasn't done waking up. A new alert flashed on his screen. Core power at 60%. Titan mode ready. Kane's pulse raced. He had no idea what Titan mode was, but he had a feeling he was about to find out. "All right, Valkyrie," he whispered. "Show me what you got." The Dominion's worst nightmare. The warship roared. A deep mechanical pulse echoed across the void. Its damaged armor shifted, revealing additional layers beneath, thicker, reinforced, unyielding. Engines that had been flickering with weak embers now burned with terrifying intensity. The ship's thrusters flared, propelling Valkyrie forward with a speed that shouldn't have been possible for something its size. And then, its true weapons came online. The main cannon, a monstrous superweapon from a forgotten era, charged. Vorkath's blood ran cold. "What is that?" Kresh's voice trembled. "Sir, I think that's a..." The cannon fired. A blinding lance of destruction erupted from Valkyrie, tearing across the battlefield. The energy beam struck the Dominion's leading battleship, ripping through its hull in an instant. A heartbeat later, the ship detonated, sending debris scattering like broken glass. The Dominion fleet froze. This wasn't a relic. This was a god of war, and it had just declared its return. The ghost of war. The Dominion fleet hesitated. For the first time in the battle, their sensors fed them nothing but fear. The ancient warship they had mocked was no relic. It was alive, its weapons turning their armada into burning wreckage. Inside Valkyrie, Kane felt the ship's heartbeat in sync with his own. "You're not just waking up," he muttered. "You're remembering, aren't you?" The ship rumbled in response. And then it did something that froze the Dominion's blood. Vanishing from the battlefield, Valkyrie's hull shimmered. Within seconds, the massive warship faded from their sensors, vanishing like a shadow in the void. The Dominion officers panicked. Where did it go? Kresh bellowed, scanning his controls. Vorkath's eyes widened. It's using an old stealth system, but that shouldn't be possible at its size. Ships as large as Valkyrie couldn't cloak. It was a fundamental rule of war. The energy cost was too high, the strain on the reactor too much. And yet, this ghost of war had just disappeared like a phantom. It was hunting them now. The first prey. A Dominion frigate drifted cautiously through the wreckage of its fallen comrades. The crew scanned every shadow, their weapons locked in every direction. Then, boom! A glowing blue blade of energy erupted through its hull, cleaving the ship in half before the crew even had time to scream. The explosion sent a shockwave through the battlefield, shaking every Dominion warship still standing. Then, a transmission came through. A voice, low, distorted, and ancient. "You should have let me sleep." Valkyrie reappeared, its cannons already charging for the next kill. Vorkath clenched his jaw. His fleet was being torn apart by something that should not exist. A secret buried in time. On board Valkyrie, Kane's console pulsed with new data. Hidden logs surfaced, pieces of a past long forgotten. The ship wasn't just an old battleship. It was designed to end wars. And worse, it had never lost one. The Dominion hadn't just awakened a relic. They had reawakened a nightmare. The final warning. "Captain," Kresh said in a hushed voice, "we need to retreat." Vorkath didn't respond. He watched as Valkyrie drifted forward, its massive weapons glowing like the eyes of an ancient titan. It didn't chase them. It was waiting, daring them to stay. Then, its voice came through the comms once more. "Run." The Dominion fleet broke. Warships turned and flowed into the void, engines burning at maximum speed. The once mighty Dominion armada had been shattered, not by numbers, not by overwhelming firepower, but by one ship, one forgotten war machine. As Valkyrie drifted alone in the silence, Kane exhaled. Guess they finally got the message. But deep within the ship's systems, a new warning blinked. 3DETCTE. Unknown entity pyroishing. Kane's breath caught. Wait, there's someone else out there. Valkyrie hummed. The battle wasn't over. It was just beginning. The real enemy. The battlefield was silent. The Dominion fleet had fled, leaving only the wreckage of their fallen warships floating in the void. But Kane knew the battle wasn't over. Inside Valkyrie, warning lights flashed across the control panels. 3 DETCTD. Unknown entity via APPROH8. Kane frowned. Unknown entity. A chill ran through him. The Dominion was arrogant, reckless, but predictable. This was something else. He turned to Valkyrie's AI core. "Show me." The warship obeyed. A holographic display flickered to life, revealing a massive anomaly on the edge of the system. Something was moving through space, something big. And then he saw it. A ship. No, not just a ship. A leviathan of metal and darkness, its shape unlike anything in human or Dominion records. It was alien in the purest sense, and it was coming straight for them. A forgotten threat. Kane's mind raced. If this thing was unknown, why was Valkyrie already reacting to it? His fingers flew across the console, pulling deeper into the ship's buried data. Ancient battle logs surfaced, classified reports, encrypted messages, and then he found it. A name. The Hollowborn. His blood ran cold. They weren't just another alien species. They were a myth, a legend whispered in the dark corners of forgotten war records. A race that didn't conquer, didn't negotiate. They simply erased. No one had seen them in centuries. The Dominion hadn't even known they existed. But Valkyrie had, because it had fought them before. And won. The Leviathan awakens. The Hollowborn ship shifted. Its dark metal hull unfolded, expanding like a mechanical beast stretching after a long slumber. Kane saw it now. It wasn't a warship. It was alive. He gritted his teeth. "Valkyrie, tell me we have something that can kill that thing." The warship rumbled. Weapons charging. Shields at maximum. Good. Because the Hollowborn Leviathan was no longer approaching. It was attacking. A surge of black energy erupted from the Leviathan's core, ripping through the wreckage of Dominion ships like they were paper. And then, boom! The blast struck Valkyrie head-on. The entire ship shook, alarms blaring, warning lights flashing red. Kane gripped the console as sparks rained down from above. The ship survived, but barely. Kane spat out a curse. So much for diplomacy. Then Valkyrie did something strange. Its AI core spoke, but not to him. Hollowborn entity detected, initializing countermeasures, resuming battle protocols from last engagement. A shiver ran down Kane's spine. Last engagement? You mean you fought these things before? The ship didn't answer, because it was already moving. A war that never ended. Valkyrie launched forward, weapons glowing with ancient firepower. The Hollowborn responded in kind. The void ignited with war. Energy beams collided. Explosions shattered the silence of space, and for the first time in centuries, the real enemy of the galaxy had returned. But this time, they weren't facing a broken, forgotten relic. They were facing the last warship that had ever defeated them, and it remembered everything. The Valkyrie's last stand. The void burned with the fury of war. Valkyrie and the Hollowborn Leviathan clashed in a battle unlike anything the galaxy had seen in centuries. Blue-white beams of raw energy lanced across the battlefield, colliding with unnatural black tendrils that twisted and pulsed with eerie life. Kane gritted his teeth as the ship shook violently. Warnings flashed red across his screen. Shields at 37%. Hull integrity compromised. The Hollowborn ship was unlike anything he had fought before. It adapted, shifting its form mid-battle, absorbing blows that should have torn it apart. Yet Valkyrie kept fighting. Because this wasn't just any warship. It was a weapon designed to end threats like this. The ship's true power. Kane's fingers flew across the console, trying to find something, anything, that could turn the tide. "Come on, Valkyrie," he muttered. "Show me what you're hiding." The ship's AI responded, activating final war protocols. A deep rumble vibrated through the hull. Then, hatches along the ship's surface slid open. Massive spear-like structures emerged, crackling with unstable energy. Kane's eyes widened as the system labeled them. Entropy lances, designed to erase molecular structure at a quantum level. This was it. The real reason the Dominion should have feared Valkyrie. This ship didn't just destroy enemies. It deleted them from existence. The Holoborn's true form. The Holoborn Leviathan seemed to sense the shift. It stopped attacking. Instead, it began to change. The writhing black metal unfolded, revealing dozens of glowing red eyes spread across its shifting surface. The ship wasn't a ship. It was a being, a creature born from war itself. And now, it was afraid. For the first time in thousands of years, it remembered Valkyrie. And it knew what was coming. A choice of consequence. Kane's hand hovered over the controls. The entropy lances were charged. One shot would erase the Holoborn from the universe, but something gnawed at him. The way the creature stopped attacking. The way it hesitated. It wasn't just fear. It was recognition. This thing had fought Valkyrie before, and if it was still here, that meant one thing. It had survived. Which meant Valkyrie had fought it before and failed. Kane's gut twisted. If this thing could adapt, what if destroying it only made it come back stronger? The decision was his. Fire the lances and end it now. Or hold back and risk uncovering the truth. He had seconds to decide. And the fate of the galaxy hung on his choice. The final choice. Kane's finger hovered over the fire control. The entropy lances crackled, charged with enough energy to erase the Holoborn Leviathan from existence. One press of a button, and it would be gone, not destroyed, but erased as if it had never existed. But something felt wrong. The Holoborn wasn't attacking. It watched him, not like a beast caught in a trap, but like a being that had seen this moment before. And that terrified him more than anything. History repeats. A flicker of movement flashed on Valkyrie's console. The AI was trying to show him something, a hidden file, buried under layers of encrypted data. Kane hesitated, then accessed it. A distorted hologram flickered to life. A face appeared, the human commander. His uniform was old, the insignia faded. This was a message from the past. If you're seeing this. The man's voice was strained, his face haunted. Then we failed. Kane's pulse pounded. The Holoborn are not enemies. They are a warning, a test. We thought we won. We thought we erased them. But they learned. They returned. The message glitched. If you fire the entropy lances, you'll start it all over again. Kane's breath caught. Find another way, or humanity will suffer the same fate we did. The hologram cut out. The Holoborn's true purpose. The Holoborn Leviathan shifted, its dark metal folding like liquid. And then it spoke. Not in words, but through a deep resonance, a vibration Kane could feel in his bones. The meaning was clear. You stand where your ancestors stood. You hold the same weapon, the same fear. Will you make the same mistake? Kane's mind raced. If what the message said was true, then the Holoborn weren't just some ancient enemy. They were a lesson, a test humanity had failed before. And if he pulled the trigger now, it would all happen again. The leap of faith. The Holoborn waited for his answer. Kane's hands trembled over the controls. He had spent his entire life believing in the power of weapons. That war solved problems. That firepower was the answer. But now he wasn't sure. He exhaled and shut down the weapons. The entropy lances powered down. The glow faded. The Holoborn's massive form shifted, the eerie red eyes dimming slightly. Then, without another word, it turned away, drifting back into the void. Kane sat back in his chair, heart hammering. He had made his choice, and for the first time in history, humanity passed the test. Epilogue. A new future. The battle was over. Valkyrie remained in orbit, silent once more. The Dominion fleet was gone, and the Holoborn had vanished. Kane knew that history had changed today, that for the first time, humanity had done something different. He didn't know what would come next. But as he looked out into the vastness of space, he had a feeling that the real story was just beginning.